Arav had always known the rules of his world's silence, tradition, and unflinching loyalty to family. At 21, he walked through life like a ghost in a mansion of expectations. Born into a powerful political dynasty, his days were scripted, and his voice often swallowed by his father's iron convictions. He had learned to keep his emotions tucked neatly behind polished speeches and cold handshakes. Rihan, by contrast, breathed rebellion. A year younger, he painted emotions across canvas and spoke his mind like it was his birthright. His family, a wealthy business empire built on legacy and pride, had spent decades in a bitter feud with RFS lineage. What began as a political rivalry had rotted into a personal vendetta. The city knew it, the newspapers documented it, and their families lived it. The two had never spoken before that day. They had passed each other in the university halls, eyes flickering past like strangers, destined to stay so. But fate intervened with a twist. Neither could escape, both assigned to the same debate team for the National Youth Forum, a clerical error that no one bothered to correct. Their first conversation was strained. Rihan's words were edged with sarcasm, Arav's with cold politeness. But somewhere between drafting speeches and late library hours, friction gave way to curiosity. Arav found himself drawn to Rihan's honesty, to the way he laughed freely without permission. Rihan, in turn, saw through Arav's quiet demeanor and discovered a man who longed to be seen for who he was, not what he represented. One evening, as they walked out of campus, Rihan asked, "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" Arav looked at him, startled by the question's intimacy. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence between them pulsed with something unspoken. They began meeting more often, under the guise of preparing for the competition, always in public, always careful. Yet every conversation carved a new space between them, fragile and precious. Rihan started drawing Arav in his sketchbook, just fragments at first. A smile, a hand. Arav didn't know. Not yet. The night before the debate, they stayed late rehearsing in an empty auditorium. Rihan stood on the stage, illuminated by a single spotlight, delivering lines with passion that made even politics sound poetic. Arav watched from the darkened seats, something tight and unnameable blooming in his chest. As they parted outside, Rihan said softly, "Maybe in another life, we'd be allowed to be friends." Arav smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did Rehan. And while neither spoke it aloud, both understood that something irreversible had begun. The first time they met outside campus, it was at a quiet cafe tucked between forgotten bookshops, neutral ground, far from their family's shadow. They sat across from each other, nursing coffees they barely tasted. The excuse was rehearsing for the upcoming national finals. But neither brought notes. Rihan leaned back, his fingers drumming the table. "We don't have to pretend we're here for the debate," he said, his voice low but steady. Arav glanced at the window, as if the street might offer an escape. "Then, why are we here?" Rihan smiled, not smug, but sincere. "Because I wanted to see what you're like when you're not performing." Arav had no answer for that. No one had ever asked to see him, just him. Their meetings became more frequent, always spontaneous, always in quiet corners of the city. Once in a park after dusk, once beneath a railway overpass where no one looked twice. They shared stories, Rihan of nights spent painting until dawn, Arav of walking alone through marble halls that echoed with everything he couldn't say. Rihan listened without judgment. Arav spoke without fear. One night, as they stood on a rooftop overlooking the sleeping city, Rihan reached into his bag and handed Arav a small sketchbook. "Don't open it now," he said. "Just when you want to understand how I see you." Arav didn't open it that night, but he carried it home like something sacred. Time blurred. Their bond deepened in quiet gestures, a shared umbrella in sudden rain, fingers brushing when neither pulled away. Arav started checking his phone too often. Rihan, always the one to speak first, began waiting for Arav to message. They were falling, slowly but surely, into something unnamed yet unmistakable, but the silence they lived in was fragile. One evening, as they exited the cafe, Arav froze. Across the street stood his older brother, rigid in posture, eyes fixed on them. There was no confrontation, no shouting, just a single look that promised consequences. Rihan whispered, "Walk slowly, don't look back." They did, hearts pounding, words locked in throats. Later that night, RFS phone rang. No caller ID. A deep voice spoke with chilling clarity. "Whatever this is, end it, now, before someone else does." He sat in the dark, phone still in hand, staring at the unopened sketchbook. His heart was loud, his thoughts louder. But amid the noise, one truth surfaced: he wasn't ready to let go. The next day, Arav messaged Rihan. "Same place, same time, just say yes." A moment passed. Then, "Yes." The drawing arrived, quietly slipped beneath my office door like a secret that had waited too long to be spoken. I was finishing a report, surrounded by the soft hum of my desk lamp and the tapping of keys, when I noticed the corner of a page peeking in. Curious, I bent down and pulled it closer. It was done in crayon childish strokes on a white sheet, the kind Arthur usually used for his school projects. Asterisk, but this wasn't homework. It was a confession. Asterisk, two stick figures stood side by side in what looked like our bedroom, one labeled Mom, the other marked with a question mark in the background. Another figure labeled Dad lay in bed, eyes closed, unaware. The silence in the room thickened, the air suddenly too heavy to breathe. Asterisk, I stared at it for minutes, unmoving. My hands trembled as I turned the paper over, hoping it was part of some innocent game, but the back was blank. The message was clear. Arthur had seen something he shouldn't have, something he couldn't explain with words. Asterisk, I found him curled up on the couch, arms wrapped around his knees, watching cartoons without really watching. I sat beside him and placed the drawing gently on the coffee table. He wouldn't look at it. Asterisk, Arthur, I said softly. What is this? Asterisk, his eyes filled with tears immediately, and he buried his face in my side. I didn't know what to do, he whispered. I saw them when I woke up that night. I came into your room because I didn't want to hear it again. I froze. Hear what? Asterisk, he looked up, face red and wet with shame. Mom and another man. Talking. Laughing. Then the door closed. I had thought maybe I dreamed it, but then I kept seeing him. Not his face, but he was there. Asterisk, the betrayal struck not like a sharp stab, but a slow, crushing weight. I wrapped my arms around him, shielding him from a truth too big for his age. You did the right thing, buddy. You told me. That's all that matters. Asterisk, later that night, I waited until Emma was asleep, then took her phone from the nightstand. I didn't want to. I had never crossed that line before, but now, silence was no longer an option. Asterisk, I scrolled through messages. At first, everything looked normal. Then I found a hidden folder of chats, late-night conversations with someone saved only as E. The messages were flirtatious, intimate, and undeniably real. There were photos, hotel bookings, inside jokes I didn't recognize. Each word stabbed deeper than the last. I sat in the darkness for hours, unable to speak, unable to cry. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because the person I once knew was gone. Asterisk, and my son, my 8-year-old son, had seen the truth before I did. The morning after I discovered the truth, the house felt colder, not in temperature, but in soul. Emma moved through the kitchen like always, brewing coffee, slicing fruit, asking Arthur what he wanted for breakfast. She didn't notice my silence. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. Asterisk, Arthur barely looked up from his cereal. His spoon moved in circles, his appetite lost, two things too heavy for a child to carry. Asterisk, I stood there, watching them. Two people I loved more than life itself, one innocent, one the cause of our unraveling. Emma, I said, breaking the quiet. She turned to me, half smile in place. Yeah. Asterisk, we need to talk. Alone. Asterisk, her smile faltered for just a second. Just long enough to confirm what I already knew. Asterisk, she followed me into the hallway, arms folded tight across her chest. What's this about? Asterisk, I took a deep breath, pulled out the folded drawing from my pocket, and handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Her face paled. Asterisk, I found the messages, I said, voice low but firm. The photos, the hotel bookings. Asterisk, for a moment, she said nothing. The woman I had shared a decade with, the mother of my child, stood before me as a stranger. Asterisk, you went through my phone, she asked, her voice trembling with something between guilt and defiance. Asterisk, I did. After our son handed me this, because he didn't know how else to tell me what he saw. Asterisk, tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time, I saw the weight of her choices settle on her shoulders. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. Asterisk, but it did, I replied. And Arthur knew something was wrong before I did. You didn't just betray me, Emma, you betrayed him. Asterisk, she sank onto the hallway bench, covering her face with her hands. I never meant to hurt him, or you. Asterisk, but you did. Asterisk, the silence stretched between us, thick with finality. There was no yelling, no dramatic confrontation, just the hollow ache of disappointment and love. Turned sour. Asterisk, later that day, I sat with Arthur on the back porch. The sky above was painted with soft clouds, the kind that promised nothing but silence. Asterisk, is Mom leaving? He asked, his voice small. Asterisk, maybe, I said honestly, we're figuring it out. But no matter what happens, I'm here. That's not going to change. Asterisk, he leaned into me, and I wrapped my arm around his shoulder. In that moment, I wasn't a betrayed husband, I was just a father trying to hold his world together. Asterisk, love had betrayed me, but it had also given me Arthur, and in him, I found something real, something worth starting over for. Asterisk, the story wasn't the one I thought I was living, but it was mine now, and I would write the next chapter with honesty even if it began with heartbreak.